Well, Dave, it's wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Happy to be here, Joe.
Me too. So, I love you're the wisdom alchemist. There's so much that goes into what you're doing, and before we get into that, I want to know. 5 years ago, this pandemic was changing all of us. How
Yeah.
did you get through that era, and how has it influenced the way that you do things today?
That's a great question. That was a big milestone, wasn't it? I mean, that was a
Yeah.
big shift. And I live outside of Switzerland, so it hit us here, like everywhere. Um, it really called on all my practices, like really sense making. How do I navigate this? There was so much unknown, especially in the early days. How do you stay calm in that? How do you not over-index to, just kind of resigning or, sitting around watching Netflix, but how do you engage in this as a learning experience? I found it was pretty fundamental and not only for me personally, but for my clients, because I continued working, and this existential threat that was seeping into everyone, it was impacting, the quality of life, of course, but also in my leaders, how they were working, what could they do? And, since then, I think that it's become very clear that it's not a return to the good old days. We're in new territory. So how do
Yeah.
you pivot with new sense-making skills? That's been a big piece for me personally, but also with my clients.
So let's get into exactly what you do on a daily basis. And to do that, kids
Mm.
always find a way to get the truth out of us. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, 12 years old. It's career day, and the kid in the back of the room wants to know what you do for a living. How do you answer them?
As long as my son's not in the audience, I'm good. So yeah, what I do is I help leaders be better leaders. I help people become better versions of themselves. I do it through what's called coaching. So I build and leverage what they're already good at, help uncover blockages, and help them excel and live a life that they want. I
So,
would say I have the best job in the world because I get to, work at a deep psychological level, but also work with fascinating people.
so let's find out how we got here. And to begin that, I
Mm.
want to know, what did you want to be at 12 years old? What was your dream job?
At 12, I wanted to be a surgeon.
Okay.
At 12, I saw the first heart transplants by Dr. Christian Bernard out of South Africa. I had Life magazine pictures posted all over my wall.
Wow.
I wanted to be a doctor.
Wow. So take me back to where you were born and raised. What were the early seeds that were planted that led to coaching and this love of medicine?
It's a great question. I was born in Denver, Colorado. Moved around a lot. My dad was an aerospace engineer, so I grew up with the space program, sort of like, living like a military family in a way. So it was always, I wasn't dropping into schools and making lasting friends. I was always in transition, which I think later in life gave me a love for travel, flexibility, resiliency, able to navigate. Um, I've been blessed with a lot of curiosity, kind of maybe from my dad, but inventing things. I got in trouble a lot, building rockets and blowing things up, but also trying to invent a parachute system with my backpack jumping off the roof. You're immortal in that age, so you're testing all these things. So I think that became the seed for curiosity. And as I went into a career uh, that dealt with national security and was keeping people safe. Situational awareness was important. Understanding human motivation, how we tick, all those things. I think it was an inevitable path looking back that led me to coaching, to helping with human development.
So what were the what I'm curious with your career arc, how did you get to this coaching point? Take me to
Hmm.
kind of the beginnings and your evolution to where you realize your role was coaching.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. One thing I noticed, I was in the government. Um, we would go out for happy hours, and at happy hours, we would make blood oaths that we would never do what our bosses were doing. It's sort of like what you do is, you'll never say the words that your dad said, right? And then those
Yeah.
words are coming out of your mouth. So, we would get promoted, and sure enough, we'd be doing exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like what was that? Or, someone on our team that was kind of a pain. You kind of wish that they would leave, and eventually they do. And then someone new comes in, and within 3 months, they're doing exactly the same thing. Like, what was that? So I became interested in, I called it the silent winds of the system. Like, what's happening that's so invisible? So I went and got educated in organizational development and design. And inside of that, started discovering working with leaders and coaching and never looked back.
Wow. So, who was kind of an inspirational force, a leader that either directly or indirectly gave you the building blocks to lend that to your clients?
I think it started way back in school. I had an English teacher and he didn't fit the mold of teacher. He was a little eccentric, very creative. He got us out of the box. And years later, I look back and really appreciate the risks that he took because, as you know, teachers are under a lot of pressure to conform to, certain standards. And he was constantly testing the system. I think he even got in trouble, but he really inspired me. Um, yeah, quite a bit, actually.
So, in the realm, you talked about being in government.
Mm.
When we think of leaders and leadership, big CEOs scream out. You have, presidents and other people that are in the government that scream out. But in your life, who was that for you? Someone that's a little bit more high profile that you admire for what they did as a leader, how they executed, how they make people feel around them. Who was that model for you?
Politics aside, I had the opportunity to meet Clinton, and he was really impressive. Putting aside all of the what your ideas may be about him, he had a charisma, a leadership charisma, where he could move a room. And I had firsthand observations in seeing him, even with his detractors they would be in awe of him. He would step into a room and his magic was when he looked at you, you felt you were the only one he was seeing.
Hmm.
He was brilliant at that. So his emotional intelligence was extremely high. His sensitivity and group dynamics, reading the room, that's something that both inspired me, but also informed me. And it's one of the critical pieces I work with leaders on is, how do you read the room? How do you, listen to your gut instinct?
So back in 2004, I luckily, because I'm in Kansas City, I
Okay.
luckily got tickets at the Truman Library to see him speak. This is 20 years ago when he came in that room and they opened the doors, the chlorides, the room, the energy completely changed like that. The what he said, I still remember to this day. It was one of the most amazing things I've witnessed in my life. Everything that you just said was transmuted from way, way far away to thousands of people in that room, and I felt it. Like I remember he was talking about solar energy on top of like high rises in Brooklyn about ways that we can conserve energy and just ideas. And I still remember that 20 years ago. I didn't write any of it down. I just remembered what he said and the way he said it. And, I saw that on camera, but when he came in that room and he was just walking in, they just opened the
Yeah,
doors. It felt like the State of the Union. You know how they triumphantly open the doors and you just feel
totally.
that whoosh and everybody's clapping. That's exactly what he did when he came in that room. It was stellar.
And see, you can reenact that 20 years later, right? Like
Absolutely.
it's real time. It's
Yeah.
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
So let me ask you this. If you could meet one leader alive today, have
Mm.
lunch, ask some questions, somebody that would be key that would help you on your path, who would you love to meet and kind of pick their brain a little bit about?
Mm. Wow. I want to go away and come back with a better answer. There's so many. I'm always attracted to the people that I have judgments or doubts about. Like I want to know more. So I think it's advisors. It's not so much like the president or a king or a prime minister that's in the limelight. It's his number two.
Yeah,
It's the chief executive officer. It's the deputy because they have to hold it all together.
yeah.
So, whether it's the current vice president Vance, whether it's the deputy to the prime minister in England, the assistant to Musk. That's who I'd like to sit down and peel the onion a bit.
I interviewed somebody that was in the government, and the name's escaping me now, but it's more important what I'm going to say. And he was on the inside, he was around presidents, he was in the middle of the soup, things that most people will
Mm.
never experience. And I was like, who did you look forward to? I'm always interested as to who you ran into that was just someone that you really liked. And I remember he said Colin Powell. And
Oh, yes.
he said it for the reasons that you said it. There was a level of glue. It's kind of like George Harrison was like the lowest member of that band that no one really recognized, but he was the glue. He was the one that made
Exactly.
all of that come together because of who he was and his persona. And he explained Colin like that. He said he was the guy that absolutely stuck to his principles. Even when that Iraq thing was going on, he was the only
Yeah.
one that had the guts to go in front of that committee and say, I'm not buying it. I'm not doing it. And in this era of what we're living through right now, with all of these absolute corrupt lies that we're getting fed every day, no one's
Yeah.
doing it. But Colin would have. And there's people historically that would. And I miss that about leadership.
That's spot on, Joe. The only reason I didn't bring up his name is I had the benefit of meeting him and knowing him and getting to
Well,
know him. And
yeah,
how you described him is spot on. And that courage to take that stand and the political savvy to be able to navigate it.
yeah.
That was genius.
I've been in journalism for a long time, and my first editor that I had in college, he was the investigative guy. He would go out and break doors down, and he was going for the truth. He was like the First Amendmenters, the reason why we have a free press in this country.
Mm.
And I was like, what's the breakdown right now? We have very large levels of corruption and things that are wrong, and we all know it, and we don't feel okay about it. What's going on? And he just kind of talked about how social media has spurned all of these theories. Everybody, we have information overload, but none of these sources are credible. So my question, right? So my question to you is this: how did we get to a point where all of these levels of integrity from Woodward and Bernstein has been eroded to a point where we can't simply teach our kids that truth is much better than the facade?
That's a great question. I think it's a complex answer. I think there's so many forces at play. I think it's been a slow boil, like the frog in the pan of water.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think it's easy concessions. The monetization, the popularization of clicks, on that becomes more important than the truth. uh, even the science of what could have been called marketing has transferred even into news, even into sports. I don't watch a real basketball game and hear the real noise. I'm actually being fed the sound of the sneakers and the basketball amplified. So, like everything I touch is not real. So the sense making that this calls for is incredible. And I think it's going to take historians, economists, and sociologists to kind of come together and journalists and kind of piece together what were the breaking points. We saw them, um, but we didn't act. And that's a biggie.
And I think about that with COVID. I think we're still too
Mm,
close to be able to pull
yes,
that camera back and
that's
say,
right.
all right, this is what is going on. Because I think the groups that have been denigrated the most are the kids. The absence of socialization, not being in an
Yes.
educational environment. And now there is this level of clemency where it's like we're still kind of letting them know we have these standards so we get funding. So we're going to kind of let you go on. But there's not like when we were growing up, it was an A was an A and an F was an F. And there was no gray area.
Joe, we could go on this one for a long time. I think one of the
Yes.
critical pieces is we've lost critical thinking skills.
Hmm.
And it's been missing long enough that we're seeing it come into the workplace. So,
Yep.
the leaders I work with are in shock that their teams are missing that discernment capability. And it really is missing. It's a fundamental flaw.
So I want to set this question up this way, and it's about your efficiency and your potency
Mm.
as a coach, helping people get to the next level. I've always loved interviewing, and I remember at one point early on, I interviewed a singer who was in San Francisco, originally from Kansas, and she, at the end of the interview, said, "I want to redo this interview. I want you to interject yourself in. Because before and after I'm talking, I'm me, I'm Joe. But during
Yeah,
it, I was doing my thing, you know? And
yeah,
she was like, I need you to be you. I want you to put yourself in. And the reason why I'm telling you this is I really, to this day, thank her for saying that to me, stopping me and being honest, because it made me have a breakthrough. And I'm wondering with what you're doing, you have to have breakthrough moments with your clients. Did you have
yeah.
an epiphany kind of moment in your coaching life that took all of this experience and everything that you know and set it into a way that's you, that's characteristically something that's going to make a change fundamentally in your client?
Wow. Yeah, we talked about jazz for 30 seconds before the call. I think
Yeah,
it's jazz.
yeah.
You know, I think when I dropped, the biggest change for me as a coach is when I stopped holding the responsibility for my client's success or transformation.
Yeah.
Because there was a change agenda. You know, it was subtle, but there was an arrogance underneath that and a lot of pressure. When I dropped that and I showed up with you as my client right here, and my first job is to recognize the beauty, the strength, the incredible, this experiment of being a human, like this person, who you're able to do and be, and your strengths, your superpowers. Celebrate that. And then not so much call out a gap or say what's broken, but what wants to unfold. I often think of the quote given to Michelangelo about David. Like the statue of David was already in the marble, and his job was just to chip away the
Hmm.
excess marble. And I think that was the shift for me, is I'm helping you remember who you are, yeah, unblock some blockages, but kind of come home to yourself.
Yeah.
And when I did that shift, my efficacy went way, way up. And I found I was nourished. I was energized by the work as opposed to tired from it.
That's a little bit like parenting, isn't it, though? I mean, you can only do as
Mm.
much as you can, and then they have to figure it out.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean,
That's right.
because you want to protect them, you want to be beholden to their success, but they're going to
Yep.
do it. When they leave your grip, they're going to do whatever they're going to do.
I still remember my son's first grade teachers meeting when the teacher asked all his parents, okay, how many of you feel that you're responsible for your child's happiness? And we all raised our hand, and she said, wrong.
Yeah, right.
That
That's
was a
it.
moment of truth.
So you're obviously highly driven and successful in your career, and you're giving that to your clients. But what is it that when that alarm clock goes off, what
Hmm.
makes you jump out of bed to not only take care of your clients, but to take care of your soul, your family, what you're doing with your life?
I think it's a stage of life I'm in. I don't take anything for granted. Gratitude, freshness. Like this day is not like yesterday. And this could be the last day. Like really taking that on as a practice, um, really appreciating what I have, what's around me, the relationships. I live in an amazing setting connected to nature, um, not taking it for granted. And, we life isn't easy, right? And we navigate quite a bit and we learn a lot from them. But also, there's an appreciation that comes with the seasoning, with the maturing.
I'm curious in these very tenuous political times that we're living in, particularly in
Mm.
America.
Hmm.
When I talk to Americans that are abroad, that are in Europe, that are in different parts of the world, I want to know this. What's the greatest thing about living in Europe right now? And what do you miss about being in America?
Yeah. The greatest thing, living in Switzerland and Europe, connection to nature, which is in the States too, but it's a different kind of connection. There's an integration. Kids here learn to ski before they walk, I think. There's still a slower pace. Like I can sit down in a cafe, enjoy a coffee, and I own the table. I
Yeah,
could sit there all day. Try to do that in Denny's.
yeah,
So that I enjoy. The quality of the food, things like that. So the senses, what I miss from the States, first of all, ease and convenience. When I've messed up my do-it-yourself plumbing and I
yeah,
need to get another washer, I don't have far to go to get that
right.
other washer.
Yep.
Here, stores are closed on Sundays. It may be a 40-minute drive to the nearest hardware store that then wouldn't have the size.
Yeah.
So I miss that. I do miss peanut butter. I have it shipped. Um, I kind of mule stuff. You know, I take chocolate and cheese when I go back to the States to see family and friends. And when I come back, it's filled with blue jeans, cold medicines, and supplements.
Wow, that's awesome. See, that's something I would just never even know. So
Right.
it's wild. So let me ask you this. When you look, let's say you have a dream tonight. You ran into the 12-year-old version of you in that home that you
Mm.
grew up in as a kid. And you walked in the room at your age now and you had a book and you handed like a coffee table book and you
Oh,
handed
yeah.
it to that young version and you said, "This is how your life turned out." Would that version of you believe it?
No. I can even go back. I mean, I've only been married to a Swiss French woman, living here for 13 years. I'm still pinching myself. There's no way I would have predicted the adventures that I've had, the career that put me in a front row seat to international affairs and history unfolding from the Cold War on. Um, no, this has been a grand adventure. And you know, I guess the message in that coffee table book would be, you know, fasten your seatbelt.
That's
It's
it.
going to be a wild ride. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's get into a story in that book. I'm going to put you in front of a room of people that know you as a coach, that know you in
Mm.
this leadership business sense of helping them get to the next step. You walk to the podium and you can tell them one fun story, almost a jazz improv moment, where you get to tell
Wow.
them a fun adventure, fun story, something that happened in your life that would kind of humanize you and cast you in a little different light. What story would you tell?
Whoa. It's an old one, but it's still the best
Yeah,
and very humbling. I back, you know, when I wanted to be that surgeon as a kid,
yeah.
I and a friend who also wanted to be a doctor, we were very proud of performing open heart surgery on frogs. We did it humanely, we thought. We anesthetized them. We had clean room. You would have been impressed with the gear that we had obtained to be able to do open heart surgery. And I even had a frog survive 48 hours
Wow.
after seeing the heart. I was so proud and I was so convinced. There's my ticket. There's a full scholarship to Dartmouth Medical right here. I can't wait to tell my family doctor. And I went in and I proudly told my family doctor at my next checkup, and he proceeded to ream me out. He read me the riot act
Wow.
on everything from the ethic violations, the dangers to myself, how I did everything wrong, and I was shocked. I was so thrown because I was caught up in the adventure and the accomplishment. I was naive and idealistic. I thought it was fine. I never even thought about, you know, could I be causing harm? And that was a huge, huge humanizing moment. Um, I still revel and smile back at, you know, all the things we did with mask and clean room, you know, protocols and everything else that were fantastic, and thinking we were, you know, we were surgeons.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So, of everything that you've done, accomplished, and more importantly,
Mm.
evolved to at this point in your life, what are you the happiest about? What are you the proudest of?
Ooh. Well, I'm a grandfather
Yeah,
of a 6-year-old. That's awesome.
yeah,
It's the best role in the world
uh-huh,
because, you know, you're not worried about breaking it. You
yeah,
know, you're not exhausted.
yeah,
So you're just dealing with unconditional love. So that's my favorite role. And I'm proud of, you know, my family. I'm 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 proud of taking a move to create the life I wanted,
yeah,
this life I have now. I work internationally. I live in an amazing country. I'm in the States 6 times, 8 times a year. Um, I'm really proud of what I've built.
yeah,
Um, but most importantly, I always stay true to values. You know, that frog was a learning incident
yeah,
about naivete and values,
yeah.
and that stayed with me.
It's interesting when I talk to grandparents, it's almost like a roller coaster or this restaurant that you have to visit. Like being a grandparent's like the, you got to get to Disney. You got to ride this roller coaster. It's always a triumphant blast. Like everything kind of melts away. So that's the beauty of
Yeah.
it. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you in various capacities, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I think I'm a keen observer. I'm a watcher. All those moves that I had to make growing up, that had me sometimes be on the outside looking in, and I became very good at blending. So I watch for patterns. I can understand things pretty quick. So I'm also a decoder. I can take, you know, wisdom traditions, esoteric thinking patterns, and bring it to everyday life, make it accessible for people. I had a room full of FBI agents meditating, but I couldn't use the M word, but I had them doing strategic pauses, and
Yeah.
they loved that. So I think I'm a decoder, I'm a translator. Um, I create safety. The feedback I get is, people feel safe, and that allows them to explore, and we can build intimacy that way. Um, I think I'm supposed to walk this earth. What I mean by that is, a lot of people in my business or in self-actualization or transformation work are constantly looking for, evolving and energetically becoming enlightened. I think I'm supposed to be a day-to-day guy. There's an old book that I love that's entitled After Enlightenment, You Wash the Laundry, so it's like going back to what it is to live life fully. Yeah.
I always think about that with Harvey Pekar. Remember that cartoonist that was on Letterman? He was the
Yeah.
blue collar government guy. Like he,
Yeah, exactly.
he did these beautiful Robert Crumb style books, and he could have probably genuinely retired on it, but he wanted to be that guy. That was the way he felt grounded.
Yeah.
And I've always thought about that. Like, just, I think that's one of the reasons why politics falls apart. They lose total touch with
Yep.
people.
Yep.
It's like when I used to watch those episodes of Undercover CEO, Undercover Boss, like
Yeah.
they didn't know the boss was there, and they would sit down and they would say, "You are the ones that have the ideas. You're the ones that know how this operation works." And I think when you lose touch and you're not a human being, and you're not fixing the pipes or you're not doing certain things, you lose touch with all of the intricacies of how this whole big thing somehow miraculously runs every day the way it
So
does.
true.
You know, it's wild. And I was thinking about the FBI room, and every time I hear FBI and agents, I always go to Dale Cooper. And I know that David Lynch was a big transcendental meditation dude, and I'm
Yes.
surprised that Dale didn't do it more in Twin Peaks. You know,
That's a good point.
just after the apple pie and coffee, just nod off
That's
for a
right.
little while, right?
That's right. That's right.
So the most important thing right now is if anybody wants to reach out, questions, hire you, any of the good work, any of your writings, anything going on, where do they go?
Oh, thank you. Probably the best place to start is my website. So it's, Dave Schoof, SCHOOF.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
But yeah, and then I've got a podcast myself going and a
Yeah.
newsletter. So yeah,
Okay. I will put a link in the show notes. Dave, what a joy.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
I really enjoyed it, Joe.
It was great. Thank you so much. Best of luck. Send my love to Switzerland, man.
Will do. I'll send chocolate.
Absolutely.